Hi again.
Hi again. How are you?
I'm
Still
good.
good.
So good. Welcome, listeners. We hope you're good. We hope you're great.
Yeah.
And
Conscious Corner
I,
with Annie Courtney. Here we are.
here we are in the
So,
moment. So I wanted to build on what we were talking about last week, or rather, a couple issues. I don't even call them issues. A couple of the shared messages that came up during a recent conference that I offered on mindfulness. Specifically, I offered it to attorneys who were interested in finding ways to better manage the stressors that are really inherent to the work that we do. And what came up in the sharing, what came up a lot during that hour is, how do we avoid burnout? And I think that this is something that we see a lot, especially during the pandemic. We saw this in the healthcare industry, but we're seeing it increasingly so in a multitude of professions, not just lawyers, but Annie, you work with a lot of top executives in the healthcare field, right? So we're seeing this in all different professions because the pace at which we're expected to get things done and the volume of things that we have to get done, we keep doing. We fall into what's known as autopilot mode. And when we are dealing with a lot and the subject matter, like the people that we're caring for, whether it's the people that we're treating, if you're a doctor, what's coming up for you in that context, or as lawyers, if we're dealing with really heavy topics and our clients, we feel what they feel, and not just attorneys, really any way you look at it.
get on us
As
out.
Yeah, as the expert, we're the caretaker, much like a doctor is to the patient. Like, we're taking care, we're trying to take the best care we possibly can of our clients and of our patients. And so in all of that doing, a lot of times we take on what it is they're feeling, whether it's the emotional pain or the physical pain. And that can lead to what's known as empathetic distress. Often it's misnamed as compassion fatigue,
Mhm.
but it can result in burnout. So we want to find ways that we can avoid burnout, because if we're not in a good place physically or emotionally, then we can't offer the best care or the best services for our clients or our patients. So something that can really support us is what is known as a compassion, a mindful or self mindful compassion practice. So I want to just go over, it's a practice that can really help us to become stronger and more resilient to what's coming up for us. It doesn't mean that we don't, we become insensitive and we're not present to the, like, quite the contrary. We can be more present, but we can be more present from this more nourished space. So yeah, I think a lot of times compassion and empathy, they're related, but they're not the same. Like, it's important to understand the difference, because compassion doesn't fatigue. Like, we can strengthen our resilience and we can strengthen our ability to be with what is challenging. But when we're taking on other people's physical and emotional pain as our own over time, even though it's coming from a good place, like we want to be empathetic towards people, it can lead to burnout.
Because one thing, because compassion has more boundaries, in my opinion. It's boundaried. Kim.
There can be boundaries, and we can feel we can feel for the person.
Not feel them.
And we can wish them well, like we can wish ourselves well. So there's like another, in a sense, like there's another layer to it. And even if it's a short period of practicing self kindness, mindful self-kindness, it can almost be like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a safe haven, like a place where we can go to replenish ourselves. And in turn, it has a protective effect on ourselves, and it allows us in turn to give so much more back to our clients, to our patients. And so the short practice I want to share is what's known as a mindful self-compassion break. And it's just sort of like 3 guidelines. And the first is mindfulness. We want to, much like what we spoke about in the past episode, in the last episode where we talked about the pro practice, it's really helpful to take moments to intentionally pause and notice how we are. When we're constantly taking care of our clients or our patients or even our family, like family for caring for others or our pets, and we're not aware of how we are, then that's what's going to allow the stress to build, and the pain, and like both the physical and the emotional pain that we're taking on through the work that we do for our clients, it's just going to build. And then we're not going to be in a good place physically or emotionally. The key, just as I mentioned, I guess the key is this same key, we mention it throughout each episode, but to not judge. So like when you take that first step in pausing and noticing how you are as much as possible, like not giving yourself a hard time. I know as an attorney, like when I feel anxious, when I feel like there's self-doubt, or I'm not feeling confident in myself, and we talked about the imposter syndrome, like when we notice these types of feelings and thoughts coming up, it doesn't feel like it's how we're supposed to be, especially as a litigator. Like we're supposed to be, our client's zealous advocate and get in the courtroom. And so when we're feeling these sensations or having these thoughts or these emotions, the key is to not beat ourselves up, that this is really natural. This is what we're humans, and this comes up. So the first step is this mindfulness practice of pausing, noticing what's here in the moment as much as possible, letting go of any judgment. And then the second step is to recognize that suffering is really a universal part of human experience, that it's human condition. And I don't know about you, but like when I'm feeling anxious and I'm looking around, it's like, oh my gosh, they're so calm and everyone's so happy-go-lucky. And meanwhile, like I'm freaking out. Yeah. So it's really easy in those moments when we're not feeling as pleasant as we'd like to feel alone. And we sort of have the mindset like we're in it alone, but knowing that it really is, it's human condition, and that it's really a sense of when we can see that we're not alone in this, then we can feel more connected to community and with the people around us. So number 1, mindfulness. Number 2, knowing that this is human condition when we're suffering, whether we're feeling frustrated or just overwhelmed physically or emotionally by the work that we're doing, the clients that we're helping. And the third prong, or the third step in mindful self-compassion break, is kindness. And this goes against the grain for so many of us. We're quick to be kind to maybe the little old lady who's trying to carry all the groceries to the car, or maybe our child who fell and scraped his knee. But when it comes to ourselves, we're so hard on ourselves. So with this practice, with this mindful self-compassion break, we practice what it's like being kind to ourselves, and then allowing that to also ripple outward towards others. And it can be something as simple as taking our palms and placing them, we call it not so much the heart or like having to focus on the organ itself, but like this center region of the heart that we often refer to as the heart center or the heart space. And just putting our palms, maybe one over the other, in this center region of the chest. And we can sometimes just even bringing attention to that area and like feeling the touch of our hands against the
Like,
skin. It can feel kind to ourselves. Or another one is like taking the palms. I feel like my my great grandmother used to do this, but just putting our palms as if a loved one were holding, like embracing, lightly embracing our cheeks or around our face. But mindful self-touch and maybe even saying silently or quietly saying to ourselves, may I be kind to myself, and just taking a few moments to extend compassion to ourselves, and if it feels comfortable, even extending well wishes outward. And you may notice that by just taking a few moments, it doesn't have to be 15, even 10 minutes, but just taking 30 seconds or a minute or two to be mindful of what's here, to know that suffering is really human condition, and to be kind, to practice self-kindness and to wish others well. It can make a difference in how we're feeling, and it can really give us strength to continue in the work, all the goodness and all the caring that we extend outwards to others. So just a quick little tool, and one that I think, just based on the sharing from this workshop that I offered, so many people are grappling with, like, how do we keep ourselves in a good place in all the doing that we do, and how
the most
tough.
important thing that I think you've said is just that non-judgment. It's just that thing that follows us always. It's just judging how you act, how you feel, what you've done, what you haven't done. It's just this constant self-judgment, and it doesn't serve you ever. It just doesn't ever serve you in any positive way. To be aware of those things and to say, okay, that happened, is very different than saying that happened and I'm an idiot.
Yes.
And I can't believe I did this again, and beating yourself up, right?
Yeah, and a lot of times we're not even aware of just how much we're judging ourselves or judging others. So again, that bringing mindfulness into the moment, just noticing, being aware, just the ability to see how judgmental we are of ourselves, that could be the gateway to bringing in some more self-kindness. And before we end, I'll just add, I heard this story. I thought it was so interesting because it just goes to show you that in this region of the world, anyhow, and for those of you who maybe are listening from far places, Annie and I are in the Philadelphia region, but here, when the Dalai Lama came to visit, and he found out like how judgmental we are. Like, he couldn't wrap his head around it. It just didn't make sense to him. And this comes up, like, we could see how much it goes against the grain for many of us to be kind, because at the Center for Mindfulness at Jefferson, when we teach a loving kindness practice, we begin with not saying verses to wish ourselves well, but we bring to mind someone whom we have a simple relationship with. It could be like a child, it could be a grandparent, it could be a pet. Because when we invite, as as teachers, when we're first teaching this to people and we invite them to bring themselves into the foreground and to wish themselves well, it's like, you want me to do what? Like, it's not what we're conditioned to do. We're so conditioned to be highly critical and judgmental of ourselves. But when we can, maybe even with the practice that I shared, this mindful self-compassion break, if you find yourself struggling to wish yourself well, or to even say something kind like, may I be kind to myself, or it's okay to feel this way. If you're struggling with that, what can be really helpful is to imagine someone who you care for, if you were like a good friend,
I
if
was
you,
just gonna say that. I
yeah,
always say, would you say this to your best friend? Would you treat your ever say this to your best friend or your like? I'm thinking of like you or friends that I've had for like if they were telling me this, I did this with my kid and I really dropped the ball on this, I would be like, Courtney, like, let's step back for a second.
yeah.
You're busy, you're stressed, like, give yourself a break. And that's so not what you do to yourself ever,
Mm-mm.
right? It's
No,
so,
but yeah, if we saw someone, good friend of ours really struggling, or it doesn't even if it was a stranger, like if I see someone crying, like I'm very quick to, are you okay? And
sure.
gentle, but with myself, it's like I'm saying profanity sometimes, like I'm very
We're
tough on
slamming
myself.
doors, Court. We're slamming doors.
Or slamming doors. So, or on the flip side, just one more tip. If you're there, you can't come up with someone. I mean, I think everyone can come up with at least one person that you feel some type of gentle, like just a closeness to. But if not, think of that person in your life. Like I can think of a grandparent and someone who really, just adored you and you had a simple, easy relationship. Imagine them saying these kind words. Sometimes when we can, even though it's our hands on our chest and we're the intention is to be our own good friend, sometimes it's hard to wish ourselves well. But if it's hard for us to imagine sending kindness towards a friend, maybe sometimes flip-flopping like a loved one, what they would say to you, like picturing that person wishing you well and being really kind and gentle. So, again, just a quick little practice, but in those moments when you feel like you're really taking on so much and wanting to find a way to support yourself, this is a great way to deepen your ability to be kind to yourself and to really practice good self-care.
I love it, Court. Thanks for sharing that. It's really last podcast and this podcast are just two amazing, quick podcasts to listen to and things you can apply right away. They're not difficult to remember. They are, could be something difficult, a little difficult to apply, but I mean, just do one step one day, just do one. And the next time go to two, it's just, I love real life application. It's realistic. These couple things that you taught us in the last couple of podcasts. So thank you.
Yeah, realistic, practical, and given the busyness of our lives, doesn't take a lot of time. So,
Mhm.
hopefully someone out there listening can give it a shot. And if you do, let us know. Let us know how this lands for you.
Please.
Well, take care,
Right.
everyone. Annie, as always, a pleasure being with
Ditto.
you.
Talk to you soon. Bye,
Talk to you
Courtney.
soon.